If you are one of the 3 regular subscribers to this channel, you will be familiar with the story of the Man in the Hat. But did you know that there was more to that story? Well, of course there is, because like all good fairy tales, this one has its own contrived sequel that wasn't thought of at all when planning the original, but will now be shoehorned into canon, presumably released direct to home video and ignored in the inevitable reboot with Josh Gad in the starring role. This is The Man in the Hat 2, Flat Cap in Action. The Man in the Hat was depressed. He was still trapped in his Silicon Valley tower, cursed to repeat his dreary tale on a permanent loop unless he could be rescued. Then, one day, for a reason I can't be bothered to explain, out of nowhere appeared an all-powerful genie. Genie!
Hello, I'm the genie,
said the genie.
Why do you look like somebody just sneezed in your cornflakes?
Well, because I'm trapped in a silicon tower, cursed to blah blah blah.
Well, let's see. What can we do about that? How about true love's kiss? That's normally the thing.
You think that'll work?
Not really. For somebody naughty Princey that is sitting about next to Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, consent issues. They're too woke to wake her. So it's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, they did mention something about that. Well, okay, what shall we do instead then? I can grant you one wish.
One?
Yes, we're already pushing it with the length of this intro.
Well, can you make it a rule that if anybody rubs the like button, they'll get a wish? Then at least they'll be cursed to make popular videos.
No, for 3 reasons. First, it's against YouTube terms and conditions, which of course you read in full before clicking the box.
Of course.
Second, I've already got that deal in place for Willen.
That explains a lot.
And third, it'll be humiliating that real life you is so unpopular that even a fictitious cartoon version of you is more successful.
Well, what do you suggest, you big blue disappointment?
Well, there is one thing you could try. Let me double check the terms. Don't share your password. Don't subscribe to Donald Trump. Here we are. This is the ticket.
You've got a golden ticket.
That wasn't really funny the second time.
Oh, sorry.
It wasn't really funny the first time, to be fair.
Well, would you just get on with it?
Right. Yes. The Prince, or the Man in the Hat, can be released if we did another review and didn't make a weird meta-reference to uploading it to YouTube at the end.
That's it. We could have done that all along.
Yes. That's sequel for you. Let's you pretend that the plot hole was deliberate all along and we actually a sneaky setup for part 2. Here you go. Have the sequel to Ink. Try not to make such a pig's ear at this time.
Where's all my hair gone? It's not a continuity problem, it's confirmation of a trilogy. Roll the titles! Welcome back to BookTube. This is a review of Spark, the second book in the Ink trilogy, and bless you. And so it does contain some spoilers for Ink 1. Did you not expect spoilers? Obviously, it's part 2! Right, well, away you go then. As a quick recap, Leora has been brought up in a society where it is virtuous to mark your skin with ink, and upon your death your skin is flayed and your story is bound into a book, and the worst thing that can happen to your soul is that you are forgotten and that your skin and your book is burned at the end of your life. But she is also aware, as is the rest of the society, of a group who have completely rejected the markings, known as blanks to the society, who mark themselves. You are taught to fear them and suspect them. They are horrendous. According to the received wisdom, there was a settlement in which all parties agreed that the blanks would voluntarily leave Saintston and live elsewhere apart from the marked, as they had a very different belief system. Spark moves the action to Featherstone, where these people live, and Leora joins them, and they're very suspicious of Leora because they have a track record of seeing marked people join their society as spies or with ulterior motives, which normally ends in complete disaster for the blanks. So Leora is getting to know this society, and they start to tell her about things from their perspective. One of the things I mentioned in my previous review is how much I liked the fact that the chapters were interspersed with fairy tales from this world and this version of the world, and the moral of the fairy tales taught you the belief system of the marked people. In Spark, the same fairy tales are retold, but by the blanks, with quite a twist on what the characters are and
alternative facts.
So again, these are all new fairy tales, specially written for this book, specially written to give us the morals, except one which is now just a remake of the one about the spindle and the sleeping that sounds very, very familiar.
Oh dear. What an awkward situation.
It's by no means a new concept that your protagonist would venture to another society and hear that their belief system is different and that they aren't necessarily as they have been portrayed. But to use the same fairy tales with just a different slant, I really like, because then that's not just about we think you're bad, we think you're bad. It's actually showing that there's a common kernel of truth that has been interpreted differently, and I really enjoy, as I've said before, books that give you different perspectives and different viewpoints. I think it's far more interesting. So these people have viewed similar situations in polar opposite ways, and that has formed their worldview. At times it feels a bit derivative, and in particular it reminds me a lot of The Hunger Games. I think because Katniss Everdeen is the girl on fire, and there's a lot of talk about Leora being a spark to begin a revolution, although it's not yet clear whose side she's on. There are some points of difference though, and something that is quite different is that in The Hunger Games, for example, it becomes very anti-establishment and it's about an uprising against the accepted order. But in this, there are two sides who, it would appear, both sincerely believe that their faith system is superior. Leora is questioning everything that she's been brought up to believe, which is a journey you go on with her. I find that Spark has a lot more heart than ink, particularly for the characters in Featherstone. I really liked them a lot, and I wasn't sure that I would. To be completely honest with you, I was a bit wary going into it, because once you've had the first book that establishes a setting and a world and a set of characters, knowing it was quite clearly signposted that we were going to be going in to see a completely new set of characters in a new world, I was a bit like, I've just bothered to get to know the first lot. I don't really care about a second lot. Go away. But much to my surprise, dog's having a drink. I find the female characters much more well developed. Leora is taken in by a particular family. Mum, dad, brother, sister, and mum and sister Tanya and Gull are particularly developed, and Gull really, I've had a real soft spot for Gull as we went through the story. There was a real innocence about her, a real vulnerability, and she just seemed very sweet, and where Leora had become quite cynical perhaps, maybe there was a younger Leora there where she was doing everything she'd been brought up to do, doing everything right, and trying to stick by the rules. We also meet Ruth, the last surviving person who remembers the group of people leaving Saintston back in the day, and she is the one that's starting to tell the tales, and we get to know more of Leora's backstory and more about her parents. But I really like the way that it's done, because we get more information as we go through the book, but it doesn't feel like things are being artificially held back. It feels quite believable. It's like when an artist is doing a sketch and it looks finished, but then they add in another layer and you see a bit more detail, and the more you learn, the more you start to comprehend what's happened. I said in part 1 there was never really a point at which I felt really invested and sort of punching the air for these characters, and I thought that part 2 we'd go in with a lot more movement. Actually, part 2 kind of strips right back and puts us almost to the beginning again, because you've got to learn all about this new society, as I said. However, now we're at part 3 and I don't know what's going to happen. It's much less clear what the next step's going to be. I've got some ideas and suspicions about what might happen, but I don't know where it's going to go. It's very, very open. It's anybody's game. There's a lot of moral ambiguity around the societies and about specific characters, and I just don't know what's going to happen, and that is quite exciting. As Ruth, I would cast Diana Rigg. There's a lot of gravitas needed, and I think she could carry that off. There's a real authority about Ruth. And as Sana, I would pick Dawn Steele for the part. Sana is a really interesting character. She doesn't really have much to do with anything until about halfway through, but she just gets more and more interesting as you learn more about her and the way that she thinks and the things that she does. She's going to be a huge character in the third part, that is for sure. Worth keeping your eye on. The song that I think will always remind me of Spark is Forry. It's a bit of classical music. It's a really nice bit of classical music, and I was listening to that as I was reading towards the end. That is the song that reminds me of Spark. Let's go to the rating. Again, it's a 3.5. I'm going to lean towards 4. There's good character development in it. There's good world building. I'm interested to see where it's going to go. I genuinely want to know what's going to happen next. I would thoroughly recommend it. Join me soon for Ink Part 3. For now, bon voyage.
In the recording, so I don't know why we're off video. I'm the genie.
Yes.
I've been looking at the wrong line then.
Well,